Commander Vex Thork stood at the front of the command chamber, his imposing form casting long shadows across the metallic floor. He wore full Drachnid war armor, gleaming scales of alloy-reinforced plating, a dark silver-blue sheen under the sterile light of the ceiling panels. Behind him, a massive holographic screen displayed topographical data and patrol routes for what the Drachnid Empire now called Sector 847, formerly the Rocky Mountains of Earth. To them, it was just another piece of conquered territory. To humans, it was home. The Drachnid officers flanking Thorks stood like statues 8 feet tall, battle-scarred, their limbs perfectly still as their leader began to speak. A subtle twitch of Thorks' mandibles betrayed his amusement as his voice echoed through the chamber. "Today marks our 3rd rotation on this backwater mud ball," he began, his voice laced with contempt. "And still, these humans believe they can resist us." Several low, rasping chuckles rippled through the room. "With what?" Thorks continued, motioning toward the screen. "Primitive projectile weapons? Guns that launch chunks of metal with chemical propellant? Their bullets can't even dent the lowest-grade personal shields. A waste of energy worrying about such things." Captain Mia Rex, his second in command, took a step forward. Her tone was measured but curious. "Commander, our forward scouts report scattered resistance in the northern quadrant. Should we deploy heavy armor units to reinforce the patrols?" Thorks raised a clawed appendage and flicked it dismissively. "Unnecessary. Let them play soldier in their caves and forests. Their most powerful handheld weapons are as effective as pebbles against our defenses. Send in standard patrols. Let them see how hopeless it is." Another round of laughter echoed through the hall. The Drachnid were confident, overconfident. They had good reason to be, or so they believed. Their empire had never encountered a species they couldn't crush within weeks. Most civilizations folded once they realized the vast technological gap between themselves and the Drachnid armada. Back in the command center, the officers reveled in their shared belief that Earth would fall like every other world. What they failed to see, or more accurately refused to see, was that Earth was not like the others. Humans were not like the others. 3 miles away, hidden within a narrow fold of earth and pine in the side of a snowy ridge, Lieutenant Kira Martinez was motionless beneath her camouflage. One of the Resistance's greatest innovations was a Ghost-class thermoptic suit, woven from adaptive polymers and cooled by a miniature climate-regulating core that rendered her invisible to heat-based scans. She lay belly down in the snow, her rifle perched on a rock and pointed directly at the Drachnid command center. The Mighty 9 Shadow Strike sniper rifle she held was nothing like the plasma rifles or gravity projectors of the alien invaders. No, this weapon was beautifully, powerfully human. It was forged from steel, polymer, ceramic composites, and decades of kinetic science. At first glance, the Drachnid had dismissed it as primitive, another chemical firing relic from a lesser race. But what they failed to understand was that its simplicity was its strength. Where they relied on technology, humans relied on skill. Martinez barely breathed as she adjusted her scope, quantum-calibrated optics reverse-engineered from a captured Drachnid scout drone. Through it, she could see the alien command center in vivid detail. Thorks stood arrogantly before his troops, broadcasting mockery like a broadcast signal, loud and clear, and painfully predictable. She whispered into her neural link, her voice low and emotionless. "Command, this is Ghostwalker, target base in visual range. Uploading current tactical grid and personnel markers." "Copy that, Ghostwalker," came the reply in her earpiece. "You're green for Phase 1. Begin long-term surveillance. Do not engage unless target of opportunity presents itself." "Understood." Martinez didn't move. The cold of the mountains didn't bother her. She had trained in worse conditions. She'd grown up in northern Colorado, just a few hundred miles from where she now lay. Before the invasion, she was an Olympic-class shooter and later an instructor for the U.S. Army Advanced Marksman Program. All of that felt like another life now, another world. But every breath, every hour spent on the range, every lesson in patience and calculation was now coming back with deadly clarity. She had watched these alien conquerors for days, learning their rhythms, their rotations, their prideful habits. Thorks' speeches were predictable, and so were his assumptions. He believed Earth was just another Stone Age world with angry monkeys flinging rocks. He believed shields and tech would protect him. He had no idea what humans had been through, what they had become after centuries of self-inflicted conflict. In the Drachnid command center, Thorks was still boasting. "Observe," he said, bringing up a hologram of their current defense perimeter. 3 layers of personal and atmospheric shielding. Automated sentry turrets capable of tracking a speck of dust at 50 miles per hour. And thermal scans precise enough to identify the metabolic signature of a rodent from orbit. He turned back to his officers. "And what do the humans have? Guns that make noise, toys that throw lead." Laughter again. This time, even some of the junior officers joined in. Only Captain Rex remained silent, her silver-blue scales shifting with unease. "Commander, if I may," she said cautiously. "The archives we recovered from Earth military networks suggest that humans have adapted their combat doctrines over centuries. They have a history of evolving quickly, especially under pressure." Thorks waved a claw. "Fairy tales. Their most advanced targeting systems require manual input. Their best weapons are thousands of years behind ours. If they were ever a threat, it was to themselves." Martinez couldn't help the faint smile that tugged at the corner of her lips. From her vantage point, she could see it all. Thorks' arrogance, the command center's layout, the shield rotation patterns, and even the subtle energy pulses emitted by their scanners. She logged every detail, sending it quietly through her neural uplink to Resistance Command. "Shield rotation pattern confirmed," she whispered. "Defensive matrix architecture mapped. Beginning Phase 2 deep surveillance and pattern cataloging." A gust of wind swept through the trees, but she didn't move. The natural depression she had chosen to occupy was the perfect sniper nest concealed from above, thermally insulated, and equipped with multiple exit paths if needed. She had spent years perfecting this kind of fieldwork. The alien sensors might be able to identify anomalies across galaxies, but they weren't built to spot a human with a low-tech weapon using century-old camouflage techniques. The irony was delicious. In the command center, Thorks was wrapping up. "Tomorrow," he declared, "we begin a systematic sweep of the region. Standard procedure. Nothing fancy. Don't waste time being cautious. These humans are brave, I'll give them that. But bravery without power? That's just suicide." As the room emptied out and the Drachnid officers returned to their barracks or patrol oversight stations, Martinez whispered into her comm, "Command, Ghostwalker again. Target is isolated. Primary Snake has returned to his nest. Requesting conditional clearance for penetration test of defense grid." "Approved," came the calm voice in her ear. "Let's show them what Earth's finest hunters are made of." Martinez exhaled slowly and began the meticulous process of prepping her first real shot. This wouldn't be a random strike. This was a message. She would breach their grid, bypass their arrogance, and place a shot so perfectly calculated that it would shake their faith in all their technology. Not with a real gun, not with a drone swarm, with one bullet, one human, one lesson they would never forget. They had mocked humanity's weapons. Tomorrow, they'd learn to fear the hands that held them. Lieutenant Kira Martinez lay still as stone beneath the frigid morning mist of the Rocky Mountains, her body molded to the frozen earth like a second skin. 3 days of silence, of calculated breath control, of micro-movements and data uploads had brought her to this moment. The mountain wind swept gently across the ridge, rustling the needles of the pines. Somewhere below her, unaware and overconfident, the Drachnid patrols began their routine. They were punctual to a fault, always within 2 minutes of their last cycle. She could have set a watch to their movements. Through the lens of her mighty 9 Shadow Strike sniper rifle, Martinez observed the world in breathtaking detail. Quantum-enhanced optics, originally developed by the Drachnid and then repurposed by human engineers, translated atmospheric interference into real-time adjustments. Still, she didn't depend on technology. She never had. It was her training, her instincts, and her understanding of the terrain that truly mattered now. Zenit 7 reporting in came the clipped, modulated voice of the Drachnid squad leader through her passive eavesdropping suite. Grid 34 clear. No signs of human resistance. These primates must have finally learned their place. Martinez narrowed her eyes. From her vantage point 2,000 yards away, she could see the subtle flicker of their personal energy shields as the squad passed through a threshold in the overlapping defense grid. A brief power drop, 2.3 seconds at most. That was her window. She spoke only in whispers now, more out of ritual than necessity. "Time to make you famous." Her fingers adjusted the rifle's neural interface. The weapon was a masterpiece not because of exotic components or alien tech, but because of its absolute balance, its responsiveness to even the slightest touch, and its flawless mechanical integrity. The kind of precision no automated weapon could replicate. The kind of tool only a human, trained to feel the shot in their bones, could master. Wind speed, 7.2 mph. Cross south. Humidity, 48%. Temperature, 29 AF. Altitude correction, 2 inches. Gravity curve over 2,000 yards, pre-compensated. Martinez let her breath out slowly. In her mind, time slowed. The world narrowed to a single point. The target generator slung across the Drachnid squad leader's back, glowing faintly blue against the white snow and black armor. It was the weakest point of their localized shield system. If she hit it precisely where the circuits converged, the feedback would disable the entire squad's energy protection for a solid 30 seconds, an eternity in battlefield terms. The heart rate slowed 5.9, 5.8, 5.7 beats per minute. Crack. The sound came long after the round had left the chamber. Hypersonic, invisible, perfect. It traveled through dense mountain air without warning or heat. By the time the sound reached the squad, the damage was done. A brilliant flash of white-blue energy erupted in the center of the Drachnid formation. The shield generator imploded in a spectacular fountain of arcing electricity and flame. The remaining soldiers dove instinctively for cover, their movements chaotic and uncoordinated. Base, we are under attack. The squad leader's voice cracked with panic. Shield generator down? We can't locate the shooter. Repeat, we can't find the shooter. Martinez had already moved. Her Ghost-class armor's camouflage adjusted to match the shifting light and terrain around her as she repositioned silently to a secondary nest 300 yards southeast. She had mapped out 12 fallback points before ever taking the first shot. That wasn't paranoia, it was discipline. That was how humans survived wars they were never supposed to win. The Drachnid would now be sweeping the region with every scanner they had: thermal, quantum tunneling arrays, magnetic resonance grids, but they would be looking for the wrong thing. They assumed the attack had come from an energy weapon or perhaps some stolen Drachnid device turned against them. They didn't know she had used a chemical propellant rifle refined through centuries of Earth warfare. No heat signature, no energy residue, just math, just physics. Just an expertly placed bullet from a weapon they had dismissed as obsolete. In the Drachnid command center, chaos erupted. What do you mean you can't find them? Tharks bellowed, slamming a clawed fist into a glowing console. Our sensors can track a falling leaf, Captain Rex. Captain Rex, always calm even in chaos, responded evenly. Sir, the projectile exceeded our standard velocity detection systems. It likely came from beyond our long-range filters outside the system's predictive matrix. Impossible, Thorx snarled, pacing in short, angry circles. No human weapon can do that. They don't have the reach. They don't have the targeting. He turned to the nearest operator. Run a full spectrum sweep. Bring in the orbital surveillance satellites. If it moved, I want it identified. If it blinked, I want to know how many times. Martinez grinned slightly as she settled into her new position, flipping to her secondary scope. From here, she watched the Drachnid activate their most sophisticated detection protocols, entire sensor towers, rotating into position, orbiting satellites aligning their signal to focus on her sector. Their reaction was everything she'd hoped for. Good. Every piece of hardware they threw at her was one they weren't using against other resistance cells. Every high-tech scan revealed more about how their systems operated, how they interpreted signal noise, how long their response latency was. The more they tried to find her, the more they taught her. She adjusted her grip. Her suit's internal systems regulated temperature and stress, keeping her body invisible to thermal scans and her vitals stable despite the adrenaline spike. But she didn't fire. Not yet. The squad was regrouping, cautious now, slower, not because they had learned anything useful, but because they were afraid. Their false sense of superiority had taken its first real blow. It was no longer theoretical. They weren't gods standing over animals anymore. They were prey, and prey, once it knows it's being hunted, begins to change. Back in the command center, Captain Rex studied the damage reports. Sir, with respect, everything points to a traditional ballistic strike. Velocity, entry angle, detonation pattern. This wasn't energy-based. You're saying they fired a bullet through our shield grid? Thorx asked, voice cold. Yes, Commander. The room went still. Then I want every squad in that valley, Thorx snapped. Sweep every ridge, every tree, every crevice. No primitive projectile should be capable of defeating our systems. They must have reverse-engineered one of our weapons. That's the only explanation. Captain Rex didn't respond. She'd read the human archives. She'd watched video footage from their last century of warfare. They hadn't adapted to alien tech, they had simply honed their own to terrifying precision. Meanwhile, Martinez continued her quiet exfiltration heading toward Position 3. Her route took her downwind of the primary sweep vectors. The Drachnid were deploying drones, now small flying discs laced with AI-based pattern recognition systems. But she'd already accounted for them. She knew their scanning radius, their blind angles, their refresh rate. She knew because she had spent days watching them train. Even the satellites in orbit had weaknesses. She could see them repositioning from her scope, changing course every time they detected a new heat anomaly or unexpected signal. What they didn't realize was that every time they adjusted, they were revealing the limits of their coverage zones. Martinez marked every move, fed every recalibration back to Resistance High Command. She didn't need to destroy the Drachnid, not yet. Her mission wasn't to kill it, was to teach. Teach them to fear the rifle they called a toy. Teach them to respect the patience of a predator that could wait days for a single shot. Teach them that humans weren't just survivors, they were specialists in war. Artists of attrition, experts in using less to achieve more. And the lesson had only just begun. Lieutenant Kira Martinez shifted her weight with the fluid grace of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Her body pressed tightly against the rocky slope, invisible beneath layers of Ghost-class thermoptic camouflage. The cold wind whispered through the pine trees above her head, but she paid it no mind. She wasn't here to enjoy the mountain air, she was here to dismantle a superior enemy, one deliberate shot at a time. Hours had passed since her first engagement with the Drachnid patrol in Grid 34. Her hypersonic round had shattered their portable shield generator, plunging the squad into panic. Since then, Drachnid forces had scrambled to regain control of the sector, deploying everything from automated scanning drones to orbiting sensor satellites. Their arrogance, once palpable, had eroded into something far more useful to her: fear. In her new position, 2 ridgelines over, Martinez used her secondary scope to watch the chaos unfold from a distance. Through the scope's multi-spectrum feed, she could see heat signatures moving erratically, Drachnid squads advancing without their usual precision, patrols doubling back unnecessarily, and drone clusters sweeping in increasingly erratic patterns. The aliens were nervous, their movements laced with uncertainty, and she hadn't even fired a second shot. "Command, this is Ghostwalker," she whispered into her neural uplink. "All units in Grid 36 exhibiting disorganized behavior. Defensive patterns are breaking down. Morale appears to be deteriorating." There was a brief pause before Command responded. Acknowledged, Ghostwalker. Proceed to Phase 3, Disruption and Exposure. Martinez exhaled slowly. Her heart rate remained steady. She took a sip from her hydration pack and began crawling toward a natural rocky outcrop just ahead. Her destination was a sniper nest she'd scouted and prepared 2 nights earlier, hidden behind a shelf of granite and shielded from aerial detection. She moved like water, 1 inch at a time, never making a sound. Drachnid scanners were powerful, but they were also predictable. They searched for energy signatures, electromagnetic fluctuations, or motion heat blooms. They never considered that the most dangerous creature in the area might be a patient human moving slower than a sloth. Back at the Drachnid command center, the tension was thick enough to taste. Commander Thork stood motionless in front of a flickering tactical display. His scales, normally a vibrant silver blue, had dulled to a cold, stormy gray. Captain Rex stood beside him, quietly analyzing the incoming data feed. 3 squads had now reported contact with the unseen sniper, but none had visual confirmation. No thermal trail, no M-spike, no weapon signature. It was as if the killer had become part of the mountain itself. "How is this possible?" Thorks muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Our sensors can track seismic shifts. Our drones can differentiate between a human heartbeat and a snow hare's. How are we being outmaneuvered?" Captain Rex hesitated. "Sir, it's not the technology, it's the approach. We've been looking for energy weapons, fusion discharges, plasma trails. But what if we're fighting a purely mechanical system? Something so old, we stopped considering it a threat. You're saying, a gun?" Thorx spat the word like it was poison. Yes, a gun. Thorx turned sharply. No gun should be capable of bypassing a Tier 4 energy shield. With respect, sir, Rex said evenly. That assumption is why our shield generator was destroyed this morning. Thorx growled, then looked toward his tactical officer. Double the drone sweep range. Thermal and magnetic. I want coverage across all ridge lines within a 10-mile radius. Aye, Commander. Martinez was already in position. She watched as the Drachnid ramped up their efforts, deploying heavier scan drones, small, floating spheres the size of dinner plates, humming with a low-frequency buzz as they passed overhead. She recognized the model. Quantum phase detection units designed to spot cloaked enemies by disrupting their phase harmonics. It was brilliant technology, but it still required a signature to detect. She offered them none. Her suit, cooled internally by a silent closed-loop system, masked her body's heat completely. Her rifle, though advanced in precision, had no electrical output, just the physics of a carefully crafted barrel, a high-velocity round, and the mind behind the trigger. And the Drachnid, for all their brilliance, still hadn't figured out that she wasn't hiding from their systems. She was hiding beneath them. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small emitter disc. It was a modified comm scrambler set to release a pulse of low-frequency noise mimicking human radio traffic, just enough to catch attention, just far enough away to not lead them to her. She activated it and tossed it down the slope. It clattered softly against the rocks and landed behind a fallen tree, where it began broadcasting a decoy signal. Within 60 seconds, 2 Drachnid squads redirected toward the new contact point. Martinez watched through her scope, her breathing steady, her fingers resting lightly on the rifle's grip. As the Drachnid soldiers reached the decoy, scanning every surface and firing warning shots into the snow-covered terrain, Martinez prepared her second round. Her target this time wasn't a soldier. It was the mobile comms tower they had deployed to maintain real-time contact with their command center. The tower stood 2,150 yards from her position, guarded by a single technician and 2 sentry bots. Its relay dish rotated slowly, humming with layered data transmission. She calculated the wind, read the spin of the atmosphere. Her neural interface projected trajectory data onto her scope, but she relied more on her experience than the readout. She remembered training exercises in the Rockies, the way bullets curved in high altitude and how gusts shifted in the valleys. She slowed her heartbeat. Crack. Another hypersonic round cut the sky like a razor through silk. The relay dish exploded in a fiery plume of orange and blue, sending the technician sprawling as the tower crumpled in on itself. Alarms blared through Drachnid comms. Sector 42 under fire. Central relay is down. We've lost uplink with grid 37 through 45. From her position, Martinez could hear the panic in their voices' clicks and hisses, blending with computerized alerts. She was now not only a ghost in the trees, but a storm in their system. Base, this is Zenith 9. We've got no visual, no signature, no heat spike, nothing. They're shooting from nowhere. Martinez didn't smile this time. This wasn't the moment for satisfaction. This was strategy. Every shot was a message, and she was spelling it out for them letter by letter. You are vulnerable. You are predictable. You are being watched. In the command center, Thorx's patience was unraveling. 3 targets taken out. No visual, no trail. I want full saturation sweeps. Deploy the Hunter-Seeker drones. Captain Rex, though still calm, began to worry. Commander, we only have a limited number of Hunter-Seekers in this region. If we deploy them all here, we'll find this shooter, or we'll reduce that mountain to rubble trying. Sir, I gave an order. Within moments, the Drachnid's most advanced drones swarmed into the valley. Unlike the floating discs, these were lethal. They were autonomous killers equipped with particle lances, AI neural targeting, and adaptive cloaking. If they found a human, there wouldn't be a firefight, there'd be a vaporized corpse. Martinez didn't move. She watched as dozens of drones zipped across her sector, their targeting lasers scanning for the slightest anomaly. But she had studied their patterns, their rotations, even the microsecond gaps between pulses. She'd positioned herself in a pocket of thermal silence and magnetic dead zone created by the rocks around her. To the Drachnid's best technology, she didn't exist. As the drones buzzed by overhead, she triggered 3 remote charges hidden miles apart, each carefully placed days earlier. They detonated in sequence, perfectly mimicking her rifle's signature. The response was immediate. Draknid squads scattered, drones changed course mid-air. Command frequencies lit up with frantic alerts of multiple shooters and coordinated attacks. But there were no multiple shooters, just her. Martinez, the ghost in the snow, the sniper they couldn't see, was the storm in their minds. As they scrambled to respond, she moved again north, this time toward position 5. The snow crunched faintly beneath her as she climbed higher into the ridge, eyes always scanning, always analyzing. Her mission was never to kill hundreds of Draknid soldiers. That wasn't how this war would be won. She was here to shatter their assumptions, break their strategies, and make them question every inch of ground they stood on. And as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows over the frozen range, Martinez knew the real fight hadn't even started yet. She was still teaching, and the Draknid were only just beginning to learn. By dawn of the 4th day, the Draknid war machine was beginning to show cracks. What had started as a single sniper engagement had evolved into a full-scale tactical embarrassment. The Rocky Mountains, once marked on Draknid maps as Sector 847. Low resistance, low value had become a nightmare zone. Their scanners, drones, and infantry units continued to report false contacts, sudden system failures, and near constant fear. And all of it, every single fracture in their control, stemmed from the work of one human with a bolt-action rifle. Lieutenant Kira Martinez moved like a ghost through the terrain. Even the cold didn't seem to touch her anymore. It wasn't just her suit, though the Ghost-class armor had proven its worth beyond expectation. It was her mind, her focus, her mission. She was no longer just executing orders. She was conducting an operation far more delicate, far more psychological than anything the Draknid expected, teaching them a lesson they would never forget. Her next nest was perfectly positioned, elevated, shielded by a snow-covered rock formation, and with a full 180-degree view of the valley. She had crawled 2 ridgelines in complete silence to reach it, evading both aerial scans and 3 separate drone sweeps. As she settled into place, adjusting the rifle mount by millimeters, she scanned a scene unfolding below her. Draknid forces were spread too thin. They had expanded their search radius too fast and now struggled to maintain consistent coverage. Worse, their units were visibly unnerved. Patrol formations that once marched with robotic discipline now moved skittishly, scanning every shadow, every rustle of wind in the trees. Martinez knew that look. She'd seen it before on human soldiers under sustained sniper fire. The look of prey realizing that death could come from anywhere at any moment. She activated her scope and swept the area. There, the primary comms tower had been rebuilt hastily. The new system was less secure, with fewer guards and no environmental shielding. Their confidence was gone. They were moving reactively now, not strategically. Perfect. Martinez watched for 30 minutes before making her move. No distractions, no fidgeting. Her breathing stayed low and even. The world outside her scope didn't exist. Just distance, wind, physics, and the art of the kill. Crack. The round struck the tower's power relay dead center. An instant later, the system exploded in a wave of energy and smoke, cutting off communications across the northeastern quadrant of the Draknid's mountain defense grid. Command. This is Sector Team 12. We've lost main comms again. No signal. I repeat, we've lost. The voice cut off as Martinez disabled the backup system with a second round, this one ricocheting off a snowy boulder and into a power node. From the command center deep within their fortified bunker, Commander Thorx slammed both fists into the console before him. The lights flickered. Sparks sputtered from one of the holoscreens above. Even the fortress felt vulnerable now. This is absurd, Thorx bellowed. They've taken out 7 key systems in 3 days. With what? Bullets. Captain Rex was already studying the latest strike data. Her expression remained unreadable, though her scales had shifted to a deeper, more somber shade of blue. Sir, it's more than bullets. It's methodology. The hits are too precise, too deliberate. The sniper is striking not just targets of opportunity, they're choosing structural vulnerabilities. Each shot creates cascading failures in our defense network. Thorx turned, fuming. Are you saying one human is dismantling our infrastructure? Yes, Commander, and they're doing it with terrifying precision. Thorx's claws clenched. I want that shooter found. Deploy the quantum eyes. Every inch of that terrain is to be scanned. Use the orbital grids. Cross-reference every energy fluctuation with a data archive. I want anomalies, patterns, anything. Martinez heard the drone shift before she saw it, a subtle change in air pressure and the faintest hum of propulsion. A quantum eye, sophisticated tech, capable of layering multiple scans across a dozen spectrums. She froze beneath her thermal cloak, watching it pass overhead. But even this was expected. She had studied the drone's scanning frequency during previous deployments. There was a 3-second pulse delay between quantum layer mapping and visual playback rendering. That was her window. She didn't shoot the drone. That would have been too easy and too obvious. Instead, she uploaded a dummy signal pulse via her embedded uplink, simulating a decoy heat trace 2 miles southeast. The drone flared with a signal light, then banked hard toward the false source. Good. Let them keep chasing shadows. Back in the command center, Thorx reviewed the recovered fragments from one of the destroyed shield generators. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. The projectile wasn't energy-based. There's no plasma scoring, no residual radiation. It was metal, sir, said a junior officer, his voice tentative. We've analyzed the trajectory. The shot was taken from over 2,000 yards. No human targeting system should be capable of such accuracy. You're right, Thorx growled. No targeting system could, which means he trailed off, the realization clawing at the edge of his thoughts. We're not dealing with a weapon. He turned toward Rex, his voice low. We're dealing with skill. Rex nodded slowly. Yes, sir. They don't need better tech. They just need someone who knows how to use what they have. Perfectly. Another report came in, this time from Sector 49. A heavy scanner had gone offline. Not destroyed, but disabled with a well-placed shot to its coolant conduit. A message, a statement, and Martinez was behind it. She moved to her next position while the Drachnid scrambled again. Her pace remained slow and deliberate, her steps precisely plotted. No rush, no hesitation. She already mapped out 30 fallback points. This war wasn't about numbers, it was about moments. And she controlled every one of them. From her new perch, she observed the field below. Drachnid soldiers moved in clusters, now another mistake. Bunching together gave them a false sense of safety, but Martinez saw something else, overlapping shield fields that interfered with one another at specific frequencies. She took another shot. Crack. The bullet zipped through the air and struck a harmonic weak point where 2 soldiers' shields met. The resulting energy feedback dropped both shields instantly, forcing the squad to retreat. Base. We've lost shields again. We're exposed. Martinez shifted positions once more. By now, the Drachnid were in full disarray. Their elite troops engineered for battlefield superiority were being unraveled by a single enemy they couldn't even see. Thorx barked orders from his command post, deploying more drones, initiating randomized patrol patterns, launching aerial sweeps, anything to contain the threat. But nothing worked. Because it wasn't about what Martinez had. It was about what she knew. She understood the terrain. She understood their systems. And more importantly, she understood them, how they thought, how they overestimated their technology, how they relied on machines instead of instincts. That was their real weakness. Thorx watched the chaos unfold across his display grid. His entire defensive network flickered with alerts, false positives, and desperate calls for backup. They weren't just losing control. They had lost the psychological battle. His soldiers were looking over their shoulders more than they were looking at their enemies. Captain Rex approached quietly. Sir, morale is collapsing. Troops are jittery. No one wants to be in the open. Patrols are breaking formation. There's rumors about a ghost shooter. Thorx's mandibles clenched. Enough. Deploy the thermal bait. Rex blinked. Sir, we'll give them what they want to see, a vulnerable patrol unit moving slowly with deliberately weakened shield coverage. Let's see if they take the shot. A few minutes later, Martinez saw it. A unit that was just a little too slow, just a little too perfect in its vulnerability. The thermal signatures were on point. The shield grid flickered just enough to tempt a shooter. A trap. She smiled. They were finally trying to think like hunters, but they were still too green, still too desperate. She took no shot. Instead, she repositioned, circled wide, and using a mirror placed 48 hours ago, redirected a beam of reflected sunlight onto the shield generator's sensor node. It triggered the Drachnid's auto-response. Sirens screamed, troops swarmed toward the area, convinced the sniper had finally shown their hand. All smoke and mirrors. While they scrambled, Martinez transmitted a data burst to command. All critical defensive patterns mapped. Full analysis of their tactical evolution complete. awaiting Nick's directive. But she already knew the directive: keep teaching, keep dismantling, keep showing them that a human with a century-old rifle could rewrite the rules of war. By nightfall, the Drachnid Command Center had sealed its doors. They'd pulled back patrols, shut down field expansion, and entered a full defensive posture. Thork sat in silence, watching the holographic terrain spin. "We underestimated them," he said finally. "We thought we were dealing with primitives, but we weren't." Captain Rex nodded. "No, sir. We were dealing with warriors, and worse." Thorx looked up. "What could be worse than warriors?" She paused, then answered. "Teachers." The Drachnid had tried everything: thermal sweeps, resonance scans, quantum tunnels, pattern tracking AI routines, even saturation bombing of suspected sniper nests. None of it worked. The moment they thought they had Lieutenant Kira Martinez pinned down, she was gone, vanished like a breeze through the trees. And every time they shifted focus or recalibrated their defenses, something else failed. Another sensor went dark, a shield generator fried, a comms relay shorted out from a single pinpoint strike. Martinez wasn't just disrupting their systems, she was controlling their reactions. From her elevated perch nestled deep within the northern ridge, Martinez studied the Drachnid's latest maneuver, a thermal bait setup. They deployed a mock patrol, a collection of heating units scattered across the valley floor. To any long-range scope, the formation looked like a squad in motion, just vulnerable enough to tempt a shot. Their shields were purposely flickering, and an exposed power node flashed like a glowing invitation. It was, by all definitions, a trap, and it was clever more so than any of their previous efforts. Martinez could almost admire it. "They're learning," she whispered to herself. But they were still learning like students in a classroom she controlled. The bait was too perfect, the heat signatures too symmetrical, the shield disruptions too timed. It was a setup a rookie sniper might fall for, or one hungry for a kill shot. But Martinez wasn't here to score points. She was here to change the battlefield. She didn't fire. Instead, she tapped her rifle's neural interface and accessed one of her decoy trigger points, a remote-activated rail charge hidden behind a weather-worn pine half a mile from her current location. She'd placed it there days earlier, knowing the Drachnid would eventually try something like this. Crack. The explosion mimicked the exact acoustic and kinetic signature of her mighty 9 Shadowstrike rifle. It detonated just beyond the bait unit, stirring up a plume of snow and setting off every alarm within the Drachnid base. Inside their command center, chaos erupted. Movement detected. Sector 7 bearing 035, one of the technicians shouted. Confirmed. Energy signature matches the original sniper profile. Commander Thorx leaned forward. That's it. That's the shot we've been waiting for. Deploy all Hunter-Seekers. Converge on that position immediately. Drachnid forces scrambled like a kicked nest of hornets. Within seconds, 3 squads of heavily armed soldiers and a swarm of drones descended on the supposed sniper location. But they weren't chasing a ghost this time, they were chasing a reflection. Because while they surged south, Martinez quietly repositioned to the northeast ridge, nearly the exact opposite direction of the fake signal. Her camouflage suit blended seamlessly into the snow-dusted terrain, her body low and still as she adjusted the scope. Her voice cracked softly over the Drachnid's own encrypted frequency, a line she'd been monitoring and feeding false telemetry into for days. "You're not the only ones who can set a trap," she said, the words calm, surgical. The command center froze. "How?" Thorx whispered. "She's inside our comms," Captain Rex muttered. "She hacked us. She baited us," one of the junior officers added, stunned. "We weren't hunting her. She's been hunting us the entire time." Martinez lined up her real shot. This time, her target wasn't a patrol or a drone. It was their primary sensor array, the one responsible for maintaining real-time tracking across the sector. It sat elevated on a reinforced pylon just above their command dome, flanked by redundant comm links and AI-controlled diagnostic systems. Her finger curled around the trigger. Crack! The round screamed across the wind-swept air and tore through the array's core. The sensor burst into sparks and silence. Monitors within the Drachnid command hub flickered and died. Their entire detection grid plunged into static. "Sensor blackout," someone shouted. "We've lost quantum feed from orbital command." Thorx slammed his fists into the console. How did she know we'd fall for the trap?" Captain Rex didn't respond immediately. She stared at the screen, her mind connecting the dots. Because she wanted us to, she said at last. She gave us just enough data to make us confident. Then she fed our analysis back against us. Classic misdirection. Thorx's voice trembled not with fear, but with rage. No sniper could plan something this precise. She's not just a sniper, Rex replied. She's a strategist. And she wasn't done. Martinez launched 3 more decoy shots from remote positions using timed charges. Each detonation echoed across the range from a different angle. Each explosion mimicked her rifle's sonic signature exactly. Drachnid patrols splintered in response. Squads darted in opposing directions. Orders clashed. The entire formation unraveled in real time. She's dividing us, Rex whispered. She's turning our response protocol into a liability. Inside her suit, Martinez kept breathing slowly, evenly. Her mind wasn't on the chaos she'd just caused. That part was automatic now. What mattered was what came next, the why behind her mission. She opened a data port and uploaded her logs to Resistance Command. Ghostwalker log, bait trigger successful. Drachnid defensive model confirmed vulnerable to behavioral manipulation. Observed reactions match prior Earth-based combat doctrine assumptions. Target demonstrates excessive reliance on pattern recognition and predictive AI routines. Confirmed. Drachnid systems are exploitable through non-digital, low-tech misdirection. Recommend tactical shift across all active human cells. Teach, mimic, overwhelm. Because this had never been about taking out one base. It was about sending a signal to every human resistance fighter still alive. The Drachnid could be beaten not with superior firepower, but with ingenuity, patience, and the old rules of asymmetric warfare. From her new position, Martinez could see the command dome. The lights inside flickered as backup generators kicked in. Drachnid soldiers were moving slower now, clumping together for safety. Fear had set in fully, not just at the grunt level, but in command itself. They were afraid of shadows, and fear was as much a weapon as any rifle. Inside the command center, Thorx was on the verge of collapse. 7 critical systems had gone down in 24 hours. Patrol coordination was breaking apart. Supply lines had frozen, and orbital relay links had failed, severing contact with upper command. The Drachnid Empire's technological dominance had been compromised by what they still couldn't bring themselves to call possible: a lone human sniper. How many positions does this shooter have? Thorx barked. Captain Rex pulled up a digital map. It was covered in overlapping lines, each one a confirmed or suspected firing angle based on shot analysis. At least 30 pre-scouted nests, she said. And every time we adapt, she's already moved. Martinez heard the emergency comms reactivate as Drachnid troops regrouped. She had time for one final move before sunset. Something symbolic. Something that would leave no doubt. She toggled to her final pre-programmed detonation, a trio of remote-controlled charges wired to mimic her rifle's shot pattern. The locations were strategic: a power conduit, a backup server tower, and a low-orbit comm satellite receiver. Boom, boom, boom. 3 perfect hits, 3 cascading failures. The command center went dark. Emergency lights kicked on. Soldiers panicked. Drones spun in place, unsure of what to do without input. And then Martinez opened a channel again. You thought this was about weapons? Her voice rang out across the enemy frequency. It never was. This was about understanding the difference between tools and talent. In the silence that followed, her words cut deeper than any bullet. You built your empire on the idea that technology would always keep you safe, that others would run from your armor, your drones, your satellites, but humans, we don't run, we study, we wait. And when the time is right, we teach. Then she signed off. No more shots, no more movement. She didn't need to fire again. The message had been delivered. Inside the command center, Thorx stood in stunned silence, his claws hanging limp by his sides. Behind him, the tactical map was dead. Behind that, the belief in Drachnid invincibility was gone. She got into our comms. She controlled our battlefield. She disabled our most advanced systems, Rex said quietly. And she did it all while staying completely invisible. Thorx looked at the wreckage around him, his voice barely a whisper. She taught us. By the 7th day, the mountain air was heavy with smoke, static, and something far more potent: humiliation. The Drachnid Empire, renowned across galaxies for its unmatched technology and battlefield dominance, had met its match in the unlikeliest of adversaries, not an army, not an advanced alien race, but a single human, a woman, with a rifle, a brain trained by war, and a soul forged in patience. Lieutenant Kira Martinez had been playing a long game, and now it was coming to its end. As she lay in her final sniper nest, shielded beneath a drift of fresh snow and ancient pine branches, she could feel the entire battlefield shifting. It wasn't just the heat signatures on her scope, or the panic rippling across Drachnid comms, it was something deeper. The tide had turned, and the invaders didn't even realize how badly they had already lost. Martinez stared down at the Drachnid command center, once a monument to control and confidence, now a fractured shell pulsing with desperation. Their patrols were disorganized. Their scans were erratic. Their drones swirled above like confused insects, and their morale, crushed under the weight of a truth they were only beginning to understand. They weren't being hunted by an enemy. They were being taught. Inside the Drachnid bunker, Commander Thorx slumped at his command table, his armor scuffed and unpolished. For a being genetically engineered to be unshakable, he looked worn, tired, smaller than before. "How many more systems have failed?" he asked, his voice a gravel scrape. Captain Rex stepped forward, tapping the holodable, which flickered on with only partial resolution. 12 major support systems offline, 9 comm towers out of operation, 4 supply chains interrupted, 18 sniper shots recorded, 0 shooter sightings. Thorx closed his eyes. "It's not the damage," Rex said quietly. "It's the precision. Each hit has a purpose. Each shot creates instability, confusion, collapse. It's psychological warfare." He opened his eyes. "And it's working." Martinez adjusted her position slightly, her eyes still fixed to the scope. Through the glass, she could see a new shift in their deployment. Soldiers were retreating from the valley. Convoys were being loaded. Emergency beacons activated. They were withdrawing. She tapped into Resistance Command and sent the final observation log. Ghostwalker final log entry. Primary objective achieved. Enemy has transitioned from engagement posture to retreat. Recommend full data relay to resistance cells globally. Key insight. Their strength was never in their shields or weapons. It was in our fear of them. We removed that. Conclusion, the lesson is complete. But before she allowed herself even a breath of relief, a final encrypted transmission lit up in her comms. A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Stern, with the layered tone of command. "Ghostwalker, this is Resistance High Command. Supreme Commander Axandra of the Drachnid Empire has just read the compiled report of your operation. Their High Council convened this morning. We intercepted the conversation." Martinez paused. "And? They're terrified." From inside the Drachnid mothership hovering in Earth orbit, Supreme Commander Dra stood before his War Council, the tactical display of the Rocky Mountain incident frozen mid-report. Kira's image captured via satellite drone days ago flickered in the center. "So you mean to tell me," Dre said slowly, voice calm but cold, "that one human did all this?" Commander Thorx stood at attention, scales dulled, posture resigned. "No, Supreme Commander, one human taught all this." Confused murmurs broke out among the council. "They used us," Thorx continued, "our responses, our overconfidence. While we were obsessed with finding the sniper, their resistance cells were studying our every move. Not to destroy us, to learn us." Captain Rex stepped forward, presenting a second map, this one dotted with similar incidents across the globe. Sniper shots in the Andes, in the Urals, the Atlas Mountains, Singapore, isolated non-lethal. Attacks with identical patterns, tactical probing, infrastructure targeting, communication disruption. Each one replicating Martinez's methodology. "They weren't just trying to hold ground," she said. "They were conducting a coordinated training operation using us as the test subject. Now, dozens of other human units know how to take apart our defenses." The room fell into heavy silence. "They call it the sniper's lesson," Thorx added. "And it's spreading." Back on the ridge, Martinez finally exhaled. Below, Drachnid transports lifted off one by one, retreating from the mountain. She could have taken more shots, hit fuel tanks, destroyed troop carriers, eliminated officers, but that wasn't the mission. The Resistance needed the Drachnid to leave not dead, but aware. They needed them to remember, because fear, once rooted deep, never truly left. She slung her rifle across her back and stood slowly, her joints stiff after days of cold stillness. The mountain wind hit her face, and for the first time in over a week, she allowed herself to feel it. She activated her beacon. "Mission complete," she whispered, "coming home." Resistance command confirmed extraction was en route. But as she walked downhill quietly, invisibly toward the rendezvous point, her thoughts drifted not to victory, but to why any of this had worked at all. It hadn't been technology. It hadn't been numbers. It had been understanding. Martinez didn't defeat the Drachnid because she had better tools. She won because she understood her enemy, and more importantly, she understood herself, her patience, her limitations, her strengths, her history. And that was the lesson. Epilogue. The lesson beyond the war, long after the Drachnid withdrew from the Rocky Mountains, after the Resistance consolidated their newly reclaimed territory, and after the last sensor drone stopped searching the treetops, the sniper's lesson became more than a battlefield event. It became a doctrine studied in underground classrooms, passed between soldiers, encoded in training manuals. But its meaning spread even further than war. Martinez's tactics were taught to freedom fighters in occupied cities, to engineers in bunkers, to leaders who believed they had no chance against overwhelming odds. Because at its core, the lesson was simple. Skill beats assumption. Patience breaks arrogance. Knowledge outlasts power. It was never about bullets versus shields. It was about respect for the battlefield, for your own craft, and most of all, for the enemy. The Drachnid thought their downfall would come from overwhelming firepower. They expected Earth to throw everything it had at them. But what they got was one human with a rifle, a woman who never rushed, never spoke loud, never missed a shot. And the greatest victory she claimed wasn't in the systems she disabled or the soldiers she scattered. It was in the fear she planted. A fear that reminded an entire empire that no matter how advanced their weapons became, they would always be vulnerable to someone who truly understood the game. The real-world lesson, Martinez's story may be fictional, but the truths it carries are all too real. History is full of moments when overwhelming forces were defeated by clever strategy, by guerrilla tactics, by the patient, disciplined few. From the snipers of Stalingrad to the tunnels of Vietnam to the special forces in modern asymmetric warfare, technology has never guaranteed victory. The human element has always been the X factor: patience, precision, adaptability. It reminds us on and off the battlefield that arrogance is the enemy of awareness, that over-reliance on tools breeds vulnerability, and that true strength lies not in having the most power but in knowing how, when, and why to use it. In life, as in war, it's often not the loudest, strongest, or most visible who wins. It's the one who watches, who learns, who waits, and when the time is right, acts with clarity. Let that be our lesson too.